you know that, but
Yeah, I would love to find a good shepherd for Yang Sibor.
Yang Sibor, that's me, right?
Maybe I'm talking about the wrong one right now.
And Sid is Jaime. So on the other two CoreConf documents in the queue to take at some point, it's you.
Yeah, so I was actually talking about Sid because that's where the action is at the moment. And we do some weird turns there, but yeah, let's talk about that in 5 minutes.
Sure. Yeah, it's 4 p.m. right now, at least here in Stockholm, but let's wait a few minutes more before starting. Thank you, Christian, for helping take a minute. Okay, it's 2 minutes past, so let's start the meeting. Welcome everyone to this interim meeting of the co-working group. I am Marco Tiloca. My co-chairs are Jaime Jimenez and Karsten Bormann. Welcome back. And since this is an official IETF meeting, the not well applies. Please be familiar with that. Become familiar with that if you're not already. It's not about IPR only. It's also about our code of conduct, especially. So be nice and professional with one another. The agenda for today is pretty slim, so I believe we're going to have a relatively short meeting, but we start with the usual round of updates on the CoreConf documents and href and Coral. And then we have a presentation from Giuseppe about an update they submitted for the co-performance measurement option they are proposing. Does anyone want to add anything more or bash this agenda for today? Heard none. Then, Karsten, I think you can take the CoreConf part.
Yeah, so this is going to be a very short part because actually there was zero time between the last time we met and the time now. So my report from the last time still stands. And so the objective is to actually get the new ideas from the discussion we had on last Thursday into the SID document. I haven't actually managed to do that yet, but that's very high on my list now. And maybe to get Yang Sibor liberated so we can push this through while we are still discussing some of the details of SID, going through a second IETF last call, getting another telechat date, and so on. But Rob Wilton still has to agree to this procedure. So I don't know if we will be able to go forward with that. So prerequisite to actually doing that would be that I now go to the ISG comments on Yang Sibor and put them into the document and get a version submitted before the internet draft deadline. So if you can follow that repo while I'm doing that, that might be very helpful.
Thanks. Francesca?
So, Carsten, do you please let me know? I wasn't at the meeting last time. I
Oh,
just
right.
looked over the notes, but I just wanted to know if you need me to talk to Rob or yeah, let me know when it's time to get his feedback and if I can do anything to speed the process.
Yeah, I think we might need a little nudge to actually liberate Yang Sibo of that normative reference. So that might be a place where we actually could use help. And I'm not sure how informed Rob is about the various places where we really could use an RFC now for Yang Sibo. So that might be a little nudge that he might be able to use. But yeah, apart from that, we have to do this negotiation.
Yes, and I saw this email. Yeah, that is linked from the minutes. I will go and look at what the last exchanges are and see if I need to ping him. But otherwise, when we have an update on the document, that might be the best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, sounds like a plan. So if that's all for the CoreConf part, we can just continue with href and Coral, I think, especially on href, actually.
Yeah, on href, I can report that we almost have agreement on the test vectors. We apparently are stumbling over some Git problem at the moment, but I hope we can have that done very, very soon. So there will be stable test vectors available for other people to play with within a matter of days.
Okay, any chance to have a selection of those already in the next submitted version of the document?
Very much so, yes.
Oh, that's great. All right, and yeah, I know you're very much focused especially on that right now for href. Okay, thanks. I guess no particular update or things to mention on Coral, Christian, instead, right?
I'm already in a back and forth with in emails with Peter O'Kill about the topic of how do we declare the directions in CBOR, but I think that's a relatively minor thing.
Okay.
And other than that, no updates. But if anyone is interested in all the fun details that internationalization has, I have lots of links I could send you if you're interested.
Thank you. Okay, then we get into an actual presentation now. There was a resubmission for this document a few weeks ago and fit nicely in this meeting. So hi, Giuseppe. As you wish, you can share the slides yourself using the share preloaded slides tool of Miteco.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hi, yes.
Yeah, so I have to ask to share slides. Right?
Correct. And it should be loading now. And now we can see them.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Marco, for the opportunity to present today. So this is an update about this draft that we present as a 0.0 version during the latest IETF meeting in November. So yeah, in this, okay, just a recap about the motivation for whom did not read this document. So this is to find a mechanism to measure the performance in core. It should be, of course, a simple mechanism because we have to meet the constraint requirement for the nodes involved in the measurement. So this kind of measurement need to require just a minimal amount of collaboration from the endpoints. We all know that it is resource consuming to read ID, sequence number, and store timestamps for constrained nodes. So let's say the traditional mechanism to make this kind of measurement is not so applicable in this environment. So we need a straightforward methodology. The change from the 00 version to 01, let me thank for the comments Christian and Thomas, that we had some emails exchange after the last IETF, and this also helped to improve the document. We had new consideration to introduction and to the description of the option. But most important, we added a new section on application scenarios to explain how to do end-to-end or segmented measurement. And then we also try to work on the security section. In particular, we mentioned that IETF-CORE can be applied to ensure end-to-end integrity protection. Yeah, just a few words about what is the technology background behind this proposal. So in IPPM working group, we are working on an explicit flow measurement techniques that the main scope is to employ few marking bits inside the header of each packet for loss and delay measurement in a client-server protocol. So a typical example is QUIC or TCP, but mainly in QUIC. The draft has been adopted in IPPM, and the first application, of course, is SpinBit. That the SpinBit idea is to create a square wave signal using a bit, and the length of this signal is equal to RTT. So each on-path observer can easily measure the round-trip time without taking timestamp, just to measure the length of the square period. This is optional in QUIC. You can see in the related RFC, in the related standard track. And also in the QUIC manageability document, you can see all the details about the application of SpinBit. The other bit is called square bit. It is different because it aims to create square waves of well-known length. For example, square waves of 64 packets. In this way, if you are an on-path observer, can easily measure the packet loss, because if you don't see 64 packets for each period, you can easily measure the losses. Another additional feature is also to use this square wave to measure both packet loss and delay. But if we already use SpinBit for delay, we don't need to use the square bit for delay as well, but is an additional feature. How we apply, so the idea is to apply these really straightforward methodologies to COAP environment, to COAP protocol, by defining a new option. In this option, we can define two patterns. For example, if we want to use 1 bit or 2 bits. So, for example, this is just a proposal for discussion, right? So I set the first bit to identify which kind of pattern for the option. The first pattern can be with just a single bit for performance. Otherwise, you can use 2 bits, that is the square bit and SpinBit. Since we have defined 1 byte, I also added other event bits. For example, you can imagine another kind of scenario when the event bits can be divided into 2 parts, loss event and delay event. And for example, an endpoint that can be the server, for example, can define different levels of thresholds for loss and delay. And in this way, an on-path observer can read these event bits and may know the network condition by looking at this threshold information. This is just to use these additional bits, but it's just an example. Now, in this slide, I try to explain the different scenarios. As I said, the main usage is to do end-to-end measurement between client server. But the additional feature has to do split measurement, because if you are going to set this spin bit and square bit, of course, for free, you get also measurement from the on-path observer. What are the intermediary or path observer? So they can be network functions, probes, or they can be gateway proxies and that are tasks to perform requests for COP. So if the on-path observers are network functions or probes, of course, the co-op option can be applied end-to-end. So we can imagine a scenario where we have an end-to-end connection between our client and the server. And in the middle, we have those on-path observers. In this way, the on-path observer, the on-path probes can read the qubit and spin bit and can measure the losses and also the round-trip delay. Otherwise, if if it is applied also the event bits algorithm, you can the on-path observer can always read also the event bits in this case. The other case is where the on-path observers are COAP proxies. In this case, we cannot talk about an end-to-end connection, and the option can be applied for the separate connections between client and server. So in this case, we can do, the measure will be segmented between the proxies, between proxy and the client, or between a proxy and the server, because we have separate connections. In this case, maybe we have to add more details in the next version, because you can always think to bundle different clients if they are mixed, or you can think to use the option for a single client at once. And also the communication may happen with different servers. So in this case, you have to check other additional fields to understand the server and to make the measurement according to the specific server that you are considering. Okay, yeah, just an additional slide about what are the key points and benefits. So first of all, no ID sequence number for packet loss, and also there is a flexible timestamp handling. This is to meet the requirement of constrained nodes. Then there is also a proposal to improve the square bit mechanism with a synergy with spin bit, but this is just an additional feature. And we can also think to possible advanced usage of this option, because if the on-path observer, that can be the proxy or a gateway, can interconnect different networks through these additional bits, can use this information also to adjust protocol parameters, for example, or it could also be possible to decide based on the network condition if it's the case to use reliable or unreliable transmission. So this is just for brainstorming. I think that's pretty much all. So yeah, as next steps, of course, we just apply well-known methodologies to this protocol. We think that it can be used because it can be useful because this methodology meet the limited resources of constrained environment. And of course, we always welcome questions, comments, and inputs to improve the document. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Giuseppe. Karsten.
I have two questions. One is TOIP, of course, is often used over DTLS, and then at least random probes in the network will not be able to see what's going on. Of course, the endpoints will be, but you cannot make information available to transparent systems on the way. Is there any attempt to get something like this added to DTLS?
Not yet, but yeah, this is something that we can consider. Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
So
For
for
now,
OSCORE, it's
we
easy.
didn't consider.
We can put it into the outer header, but if we're using DTLS, we don't really have control over what's in those headers. So maybe that's worth having a look at. The other question, maybe it's not so much about this draft, but more about the ecosystem that will spring up to make use of this. What is going to be the way that the peers actually agree on the kind of configuration they will be using here? So how do they know the number 64 in your example? Is there a
Yeah,
well-defined way?
this is something that it can be, for example, configured. Yeah, for now, the control protocol, let's go like that, is not yet under definition for this mechanism, because we are still defining in IPPM the methodologies. So one of these methodologies is already optional in Quick protocol, but for the control protocol, so for now we assume that it is static. This is a static configuration on the node. Yeah, but in the future we have to think about the control protocol. For example, for IPv6 we already have for the alternate marking methodology that is quite related to this method. We are working on control protocol, but this is in a second stage. Let me, because for now we want, the first thing is to define the methodologies, to find an agreement about what are the parameters, and then we can define the control part.
Yeah, probably the control part needs to be extremely extensible, because there will be very many ways to use this. So it's probably a good idea not to tie the actual bits on the wire to the way the configuration is exchanged. On the other hand, to start experimenting with things. I mean, even if you do static configuration, you probably want to interchange configurations between the experimenters. So you essentially need to have something there from day one, at least if you want to have cross-domain experimentation.
Yeah, it's correct. Yeah, it's correct. For the control part, yeah, we need to think about once everything is defined for the protocols. Yeah, we can discuss. Yeah, and the cross domain is an important thing that we have to consider. Indeed, for some application, we limit this to control a domain. Since you have to solve the cross-domain and security problems, privacy issues. So to easily overcome this kind of objections, we are limiting to control a domain. This is, for the control part, is something that you have to consider.
Yeah, of course, that also depends on whether you actually think about the configuration part as a control part. So you command the other side to do this or that, or something that where essentially the two sides exchange what they are willing to do, and then agree on something. So it's not you don't really have to have them in the same domain. So both sides are kind of free to do what they want. They just explain what they are doing, so they know the 64 or whatever these parameters are. So what's your intended status for this work? So when this becomes an RFC, what should it be?
Do you mean in co-op or in IPPM?
I don't know. I don't know even that. So
No, okay. In IPPM, because in IPPM we are defining the, let's say the document is just informational. So it means that we are there is Telecom Italia, Orange, other some operators, but also Akamai that already have early deployments of these demonstration for the application on Quick in particular. So that's why in IPPM we propose just an informational document that defines the methodology in a, let's say, transport agnostic way. So it can be applicable to Quick, to TCP, to co-op without any problems, right? So you can apply in a client server environment for a client server protocol. So in Quick, it was already discussed. Spinbit has been accepted as an optional usage. But for the other lost bit that I also had here, it is still under discussion because in Quick, you know that it is driven by over the top. So it is quite difficult to propose new things, right? So that's why we also had the idea to introduce these bits to co-op because it is also a similar environment, and the fact that on constrained nodes you have those limitations also can leverage, right, the way how this methodology works. So yeah, so in IPPM we are defining the informational documents, and then we want to propose in different to different client server protocols. For now, Quick, Co-op are two candidates. Let's say the standard track proposal.
Okay, so you didn't mention experimental as a potential outcome?
Yeah, let's say the experiment is the activity that is mainly done in IPPM because there is also a hackathon table on these methodologies. So I don't know if you had the opportunity to join in the past. We had some discussion to the hackathon about this kind of methodology. So here there are several experiment and demonstration that were presented. Maybe I can also provide some reference to this, of course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Christian?
I have two kinds of questions. The one is, whose constraints are you considering here? You mentioned that message IDs and stuff might be troublesome for constrained devices, but at least the client and the servers already deal in those. So I'm wondering whether you're also having constrained whether you're having core style constraints on the probes and the proxies that you're employing.
Yeah, let's say the principle, the idea is that since we are in a constrained environment, so you also if you have to take timestamps, for example, for each packet, is resource consuming. So also this operation, I have in mind also this operation. While in this way, it is much more easy because you only have to measure the length of the square period. It's just the same motivation why also Quick found this proposal quite straightforward, and in the end they accepted to define as optional. So of course there are some advantages to use this kind of methodologies, and this is one of the main reasons, because the alternative is that it's much more resource consuming for the nodes, at least for the timestamp handling. If we don't mind about the ID, but at least for the timestamp handling.
Okay, then I'll continue with another question, that is, could you outline the kinds of questions that you expect to answer in the endpoints with this? Because I think I'm slowly getting a grasp on what the intermediaries might do, but you're also mentioning that this is useful for the endpoints, and there I'm not quite understanding yet which answers would, for example, a client be able to answer with this that it is not able to answer without, or a server for that matter.
Yeah, from on a client side, of course, you can measure the same thing that you can measure now, but with less resources. Because, for example, if you are going to measure the round trip time, you can just raise a bit, wait that your packet go back, and measure the length of the period, and the same for packet loss. So you don't need to check each packet. You can just raise a bit, wait, for example, 64 packets, see, and just raise a counter, hand. So it's quite simpler. So, but the main advantage is not only on client side, but because you are enabling on-path measurement that in specific environment, in operation environment, for example, if we think about service provider, it can be useful because maybe you don't manage the client. If you are a service provider, you cannot manage the client itself, but you manage your network. You have an on-path observer. You may have a probe, a proxy, or where else, and in this way you can check the network conditions.
So we're focused. So we're focusing on those intermediaries and not the client and not the endpoints, because kind of for them it's just bycatch. What can be measured more easily? Would that be an adequate way of phrasing it?
Yeah, of course, if the methodology allow only end-to-end measurement, it's not so let me pass the term revolutionary, right? Because you are defining something that is already possible. But yeah, the added value is that you are enabling on-path measurement as well. So you are not only simplifying end-to-end measurement, but you are also enabling on-path observer that for specific application, if we think about service provider network, as this the example that I mentioned before, or other example, you are, or interconnection also between different networks, you want to segment, right? So you can do that with by using this methodology.
I'm not sure. I'm fully following the improvements on the client and server side, but if it's okay for you, let's focus here on the on-path part.
Yeah, let's say the improvement is not so. It may be maybe we should make some, let's say, test to demonstrate a real improvement. Maybe it's not so high. I would say that a little improvement there will be, because you are now making not measurement for each packet, but you can do measurement by using block of packets. So if you are taking, I assume that if you are using block of packets instead of taking timestamp, for example, for each packet, yeah, you can do that in a better way. But we have to demonstrate that. Maybe some experimentation on the comparison can be good in this way. But for core, of course, yeah, you are adding the on-path measurement, yeah, as the main added value.
Yeah, seeing concrete improvements there would definitely help sell the point for the endpoints. But let's look briefly at the on-path case. So I understood from your comments on clients being mixed and multiple servers being there that you envision that scenarios would be possible where there is a passive probe listening in on a connection between two proxies and still get useful information out of that. Did I understand that correctly?
Do you mean on between two proxies, right? Okay.
Yeah. So
yeah,
kind of generally you can, if you don't control, your assumption is, or as long as the assumption is that the clients are not under your control, the best you can hope is that the clients and servers, or the endpoints are not under your control. The best you can hope is that the endpoints implement this in the first place, which will probably be because you're under contract with them that they need to do that, because why would they otherwise?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you can also do the measurement on proxies as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but for proxies, it would boil down to the same questions as before. Like,
okay,
I'd expect that.
Yeah, because it is end-to-end. Yeah. Okay.
The proxy the proxy sees the full game and might profit from those improvements, but nothing more.
Yeah.
So assume there's this on-path probe between an upstream and a downstream proxy. Is that a situation which you expect to support?
Yeah, I think that, as I said, there is something that we can consider, because you have a bundle of clients, a bundle maybe of servers, so you have to check other fields to do the measurement. But of course, it's something that you can.
Which fields would you check?
For example, you have to check the address of the, if you are talking about an on-path observer that can check other additional fields to understand, for example, the flow ID, to identify in some way the destination, the source and destination, to identify the client.
Okay, so you're expecting that the proxies cooperate by setting a flow ID consistently across the kind of by taking the.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just think about if we can identify the address of the server or the address of the client. Or another proposal that I also mentioned is about to measure, for example, on the proxy, on two proxy can in some way cooperate to use the bit for one client at once, or for one server at once. In this way, this simplify a lot the work for the on-path observer. So you can in some way, for example, move from one client to another, activate one client for measure. Yeah, you can.
So if the proxies cooperate in this, is there much difference remaining in doing the measurements on the proxy? Kind of, if the on-network probe relies, and I think it will have to rely on the. I don't see. So the thing is, because I was asking what fields do you look into. You might be tempted to look into the URI host option, but depending on how that proxy works, that may or may not give you accurate information about the upstream server. Information might be in the URI scheme and in the proxy URI option, or it might even be somewhere in the path, because that's really up to the proxy. And on the other direction, there is no field that tells it. Now, if you are relying on the proxy to cooperate, for example, by picking out a distinctive client and ratting it out to the server, telling that this is a particular client, then yes, this all becomes feasible again. But then I don't quite see where is the difference between doing the measurement on the probe supported by a proxy and doing the measurement on the proxy right away, which has the full information and doesn't have to serialize it over the network.
Yeah, of course, the proxies need to, in any kind of measurement, you need at the endpoint in some way need to cooperate. So I assume that the proxy will at least support the options and the setting of those bits and so on. So that is the assumption. Yeah. And the value again is related to, of course, to the more easy way to do measurement. So for this, I'm quite sure, because I have let's say the statistic from other environment like Quick, like TCP. So this is, let's say something that is feasible and that is also demonstrated in some production network like Orange, Telecom Italia. So it is something that it is already, but not for co-op. I'm not talking.
I trust that the methodology in general works, but I'm just very doubtful as to whether it makes any sense to do it across proxies at all. Kind of whether that can be made to work without doing so much work at the proxy that you could just as well do the kind of place the whole probe at the proxy, because
I don't think you can put the probe at the proxy. Maybe you have your probe in the middle, or it is not. This is just a specific example that you are doing, because you can have your probe in the network, so you don't need to put the probe together with the proxy.
Yeah,
so
but
you can have the proxy in the middle or between the client and the proxy. You can also have another probe, or between the proxy and the server, you can also have another probe. So it's not mandatory to put together with proxy. So you can have
no, but it's not mandatory to put together with proxies. But if it is supposed to work across it should be described in which way it is supposed to work across proxies. If the statement is that it works only in absence of proxies, that would be a statement. If the statement is it works with proxies provided they collaborate in this and that way, that's another statement. And if the statement is it works with proxies that are just proxies but do not otherwise collaborate, that would be a third statement. But either of these three I would like to see, and if it's the third, then I think that it would be tricky to show that it really has these properties.
Yeah. I see your point. Maybe we have to, in the next version, we have to specify better what is the kind of measurement you can do based on situation. So, for example, if you don't have proxies, you have end-to-end connection, and the on-path observer can measure round-trip time losses. If you have proxies, something like that. I see your point. Okay.
As much as I'm a big fan of ensuring that everything around co-op works through proxies, it might also be a good time then to evaluate whether you really need it, because getting this to work across proxies is something that I expect will be relatively tricky. Doable, but tricky. If you have use cases for it, please go for it, and I'm happy to review it. If you do not, you might just stick with these options as hop by hop and kind of limit it to that if you don't have the use cases for it, just so that you don't waste work that you don't actually need just because I'm saying here that it needs to work across proxies.
No, I'm just saying that since we are proposing the option, so let's discuss how to apply not only, so how to see how it can work in all the situations, because since the option is related to core protocol, so you will be happy to apply in all the situations and see in each situation how you can apply and how you can use this option. Maybe in some situation it is easy, in other situation it cannot be so feasible. So yeah, of course, I see your point. But
thank you.
Yeah, I will try to improve in the next revision. I don't know if I have time to do by Monday, but of course in the next revision I will do.
Thank you. That was a great discussion, really. And I have also a couple of comments that somehow relate to both comments from Karsten and Christian. So I just had a quick look at the draft, honestly. In the section when you discussed the different setups, basically, section 5, you're considering a lot of possible different setups that you kind of mentioned in the previous discussion. So with or without proxy, with or without a probe, using or not using OSCORE. And it can be pretty difficult to follow and understand for each possible setup and combination what that means in terms of limitation to a certain party interested in doing that performance measurement. So what that party is still going to be able to learn and what not. So maybe it helps if you categorize somehow in a relatively strict way the different setups that you can come up with, combining the different variations and discuss the limitations that the different setups result in. I suppose also depending on using one bit or the other or both combined as another dimension.
Yeah.
It may help to support this also with examples through ASCII diagrams. I know it's going to be tricky, but you may start with the most important ones you believe to be the most important ones as a start. This should be partly related with what you discussed with Christian also.
Yeah, sure. Is what I remind and what I also understood from the discussion with Christian. Yes, we have to define the application scenarios maybe with subsection, with different setup, precise setup.
Classes of setups.
Yeah. Classes
and the limitations you have for each. And
so
where
a reader can see easily, because I also assume that one is familiar with those techniques, but of course in this case, since there are different setups, it's better to have in the application scenarios section different subsection. Each one can specify a specific setup, and and in this way the things are more clear. I guess.
Okay, another comment is more specific on the option you propose, actually. I was wondering if you can elaborate more on the fact that it is defined as part of the cache key. Could you elaborate on that choice?
What do you mean?
Because I wasn't expecting that. I thought it was going to be not part of the cache key. Maybe it's just a typo or non-intentional anyway.
Yeah, it's we can. I don't have an answer. So I mean, we didn't consider that for now.
Okay.
So
Understand. You may also want to clarify better about how the option is processed by OSCORE. Because now back to something Karsten raised at some point before. When I was reading the definition of the option and imagining what was going to come, I suspected, okay, this option is supposed to be used inner and outer. But then there's no such explicit discussion later on, and that's probably what you want, actually, to be able to make this work when you use OSCORE. Just something to think about, but you should properly discuss how Oscar works with this option.
Okay. Yeah, this is something yeah, I will see. I will also have a look careful to the definition, to the document, to the related documents, yeah, to have all the information.
Thank you.
No.
Okay, any more comments, questions for Giuseppe? And Giuseppe, you mentioned before you may provide references to resources and possible implementation hackathon activities. If so, please feel free to share those references to the mailing list. That'll be very helpful.
Yeah, sure. I have to check with the other people if they are going to have an hackathon to this coming IETF. I will let you know, of course. I will share the information.
Great, thank you.
No, welcome.
And everyone, of course, feel free to continue the discussion and provide more comments on the mailing list. Okay, which brings us to the AUB part. Yeah, just to mention, this is the last interim meeting before IETF 113, where we are going to meet on Friday 25 at 10 o'clock Vienna time in the morning. So, of course, we're going to resume a new series of interim meetings. I was thinking about end of April, and of course, keeping the same cadence to not interfere with the same cadence intended for CBOR. So a good day for resuming, I think, would be Wednesday, April 27, and then every other Wednesday, same local time as today. And that would give room for 6 interim meetings before IETF 114. Would it work for you, or would this create any major issue to anyone? Heard none, then I'll book the next series. I'll be in Vienna in presence, so I'm looking forward to meeting those of you there. Otherwise, see you online. Thank you for today. See you soon.
Thank you. See you.
See you online. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.